I'm really tired of the story of us as the victim, as if we are always the people being done unto and not the people doing.
He's been an award-winning commercial TV host, then an international anchor for CNN, covering conflicts around the world. Now Stan Grant is turning his focus to his own people, becoming a national voice for Indigenous affairs. His speech about racism last year went viral and was called Australia's Martin Luther King moment. But now he says it's time to stop seeing Indigenous people as victims and more as survivors and pioneers.
This has been burning in me from childhood. I lived right at the coalface of Australian poverty and bigotry. I saw what my parents had to go through in what was a very segregated Australia. I saw my parents turned away from shops when they tried to go into them. I saw my grandfather jailed for things that no one should have a right to be jailed for. The risk is in you pathologising a people, saying that you are bound to this fate because you are X or Y. The way you deal with that is you change the narrative, you change the story. Writing, for me, is a way of changing the story.
In your book, you speak about Frank Foster, your great-great-grandfather.
We'd known very little about him until just recently when I discovered this lost story. He is one of the most significant figures emerging out of Sydney after dispossession and settlement. This is a report by the New South Wales Education Department. Frank Foster, 19 years of age, gave a lesson in subtraction and arithmetic.
Frank Foster is an intelligent half-caste.
Intelligent half-caste. And look at this, he reads and spells well, apparently.
Frank's story is a very tragic story in many respects, but you don't frame it that way in your essay.
I'm really tired of the story of us as the victim, as if we are always the people being done unto and not the people doing. If I look at my great-grandfather's life, what an extraordinary journey it was to be a boy huddled with his family at Circular Quay, banished from Sydney, his traditional homelands, raised in the missions out west, to always constantly find his life shaped by the intervention of the state, but aspire to be a school teacher, aspire to something greater. And this is the death notice in their newsletter, and it said here, a well-known and respected identity has passed away in the person of Mr. Frank Foster. He was a great sufferer. He is surviving, he's a man of ambition and aspiration, and I think that is a story that is very common to us, and it's a story we don't tell often enough.
You say that Indigenous Australians have a lot in common with the migrant experience.
Yeah.
How?
If you look at the forces that were driving post-World War II migration, people were fleeing economic collapse, tyranny, political upheaval, war, conflict. The same forces that we had endured and lived with here. They came here looking for a new beginning, and our people fanned out as well across Australia looking for a new beginning. This is in every respect a classic migration story.
Obviously there is a big difference in that the struggle of Indigenous people is over their own land, and this has been inflicted by our own government. Is this just in some way making this history less traumatic?
Oh no, I think trauma sits at the heart of migration. Why were we moving? Moving because we'd been forced off our land. We're no different to what I've seen in other parts of the world where people have had to respond and survive against enormous odds.
You don't think that's taking away the role of the government in our Indigenous history at all?
There's a difference between policy and how people respond to policy. Policy is only half of the story. So you can have a policy such as assimilation, predicated on the idea at the time of ridding Australia of the evil half-caste, as it was termed. But what did our people see? My grandfather saw an open door. He went and fought in World War II. He came back and walked his family off the mission. He said, I'm going to get a house uptown. I'm going to get a job. I'm going to get my kids into school. He never abandoned who he was. In fact, our communities were strengthened by the resilience of our people.
A lot of news stories do focus on the bad statistics of Indigenous Australia, but as you say, you think there is another narrative that's not being told.
The fastest growing sector of the Aboriginal population is in fact the middle class. It's growing faster than the comparable middle class of non-Indigenous Australia. We have tripled the number, or more than tripled the number, of Aboriginal university graduates in a decade. We are also a people who are predominantly part white. Predominantly, we are of mixed heritage. I am critical of the idea that people frame an identity as an exclusive, solitarist identity that denies a common humanity with other people. I just think it is ludicrous for me or for you or any other Indigenous person to sit here who is clearly of mixed ancestry to deny that part of their ancestry. That doesn't challenge my conception of myself as an Indigenous person. It enhances it.
At the start of your career, you avoided covering Indigenous stories. You didn't want to be typecast or marginalised, and that you think that you made the right choice in doing
definitely.
that.
My idea is that an Aboriginal person can be anything that they want to be. There is still a tendency to put us in that box. You tick the box, you go on that side of the ledger. You are the Indigenous lawyer, the Indigenous doctor, the Indigenous teacher, the Indigenous journalist, and inevitably people see you that way. But if I walk through the door, if other Indigenous people walk through the door, through the sheer excellence of our work, the force of our presence, you change things.
Dan Grant, thanks for joining us today.